Finally, the Democrats moved on to Andrew Cuomo. Okay, so their big pitch here, because the Democratic pitch is that Donald Trump is a mean, bad man who is mean and bad, they're focusing in on COVID, right? COVID is the big thing. This is the overarching meta-narrative, is that Donald Trump doesn't care about you, and that is why your family member died of COVID. But you know who does care about you? Andrew Cuomo, the worst governor in America. So they trotted out Andrew Cuomo. Now, I don't know what kind of perverse sense of humor you have to trot out Andrew Cuomo to talk about success and failure in COVID. This is like trotting out the captain of the Titanic to talk about avoiding icebergs. Okay, the headlines from New York these days are astonishing. It'll be things like in the New York Times like, New York handled the first wave. Will they handle the second? If by handle the first wave meant everyone died, all of the humans died, then sure, great job, Andrew Cuomo. But Andrew Cuomo was trotted out at the DNC, and he made some weird comments. He suggested, for example, that COVID was mostly a metaphor that killed 33,000 people in his state. But that's a hell of a metaphor. It's a good metaphor right there. Here was New York Governor Andrew Cuomo talking about how COVID is a symptom, not an illness. COVID just demonstrates how we were already so divided. What COVID mostly suggests is that you probably shouldn't cover up nursing home deaths. His state deliberately covered up nursing home deaths, said there were 6,600 of them, there were 11,000. Here is the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who, when he is not being grilled by his brother about his nostril size, is letting old people die in his state.
We went through hell, but we have learned much. We know that our problems go beyond the COVID virus. COVID is the symptom, not the illness. Our nation is in crisis, and in many ways, COVID is just a metaphor. A virus attacks when the body is weak and when it cannot defend itself. Over these past few years, America's body politic has been weakened.
In many ways, it's not a metaphor. In like the ways where people were suffocating to death, it was not such a metaphor. In a lot of ways, it wasn't a metaphor, like when people were not allowed to see their loved ones as they lay dying, as their lungs basically ceased to function. It turned out not such a good metaphor. It was mostly not a metaphor. According to Andrew Cuomo, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for his excellent leadership. And then he talked about divisions in America. Andrew Cuomo, the guy who's right now saying, I'm going to ban people from other states because New York handled this great, but everybody else handled it terribly. While he sits on, by state, the second worst death per million rate in America. The only state that surpasses is New Jersey. Here's Andrew Cuomo suggesting that we've learned how bad things can get when we're divided. That's why we have to unite. Unite around my garbage policy. The temerity that it takes to trot out Andrew Cuomo at your convention after he has presided over the greatest natural loss of life in the United States, by natural I mean illness-related, loss of life in the United States in decades is astonishing. I mean, the gall is just incredible. Here is Andrew Cuomo.
Today, we trail the world in defeating COVID. We have over 5 million cases. Americans learned a critical lesson, how vulnerable we are when we are divided, and how many lives can be lost when our government is incompetent. But we learned something else, my friends. We saw the negative, but we also saw the positive. As they proved their way failed, we proved that our way succeeded.
Which way would that be? Like, what now? Andrew Cuomo being trotted out as a success story is one of the most extraordinary examples of gaslighting I think I've ever seen in my entire life. That is an incredible, incredible thing. It's like O.J. Simpson talking about how to prevent murder. My God, people. Wow, wow, wow. By the way, if you want to talk about shamelessness, wait until we get to the next person that the Democrats had speak. They had a woman from Arizona whose father died of COVID speak at the convention and say maybe the most shameless thing I've ever heard on a Democratic National Convention stage. Her name was Kristen Urquiza. Literally, her entire billing is father died of coronavirus. It's the only reason that she is here, right, is because she's a Democrat and her dad died of coronavirus. And she blames Trump for this. This is one of the most shameless things I have ever seen at a political convention. It is truly shameless. Okay, I feel awful for the lady because anybody who has a relative die, that's a horrible, horrible experience. But this is a shameless political move by the Democrats to bring out a woman whose parent died of COVID, to blame Trump and do it in the way that she does is on a political and a moral level despicable. I mean, really despicable. Listen to what she says. It's patently crazy. Here we go.
My dad, Mark Anthony Urquiza, should be here today, but he isn't. He had faith in Donald Trump. He voted for him, listened to him, believed him and his mouthpieces when they said that coronavirus was under control and going to disappear. that it was okay to end social distancing rules before it was safe, and that if you had no underlying health conditions, you'd probably be fine. My dad was a healthy 65-year-old. His only pre-existing condition was trusting Donald Trump, and for that, he paid with his life.
So apparently only Trump voters have died. Anybody who listens to Trump died. If you didn't listen to Trump, you're fine. All those people in New York who died, entirely Republicans. To blame Trump for this guy dying of COVID, I mean, this is equivalent to when there was an ad in 2012 blaming Mitt Romney and Bain Capital for firing a guy so his wife would later die of cancer. Like, is there any evidence that he just went out there willy-nilly and started macking on people who had COVID because he believed Trump? That's such an unbelievable statement that her dad is dead because he trusted Trump, as opposed to what? Like, you know what this is? Honestly, that sort of take on life is a bizarrely ritualistic take on what it takes to mitigate risk. That if you just don't vote for Trump, I guess you're immune to COVID now. If you don't believe Trump and you pay no attention to Trump, then apparently you're immune from COVID, which is weird because every single state that leads in death in the United States is a blue state. Every single one. All of them. The only one in the top 10 in terms of death per millions that is not a blue state is Mississippi. Every other one is a blue state. So I'm failing to see the connection between you believe Donald Trump and you die of COVID. That's an absurd contention. Truly absurd. But the Democrats trotted that out in prime time last night.